to eat a house
I didn't
party
know this
reading.
was left round.
It's fantastic. I love
I
it.
know.
It's really great.
No way. They tend to.
Guys.
All right. All right.
So is
Lori
everybody
knows these, she'll
arrived
go
for
over
the
it.
traffic that
Pretty
we're
much.
trying to?
Pretty much.
Okay.
We may have a straggler or two, but
All right.
straggle on.
All right. You know what? I'm good.
Okay, you're good?
That's like I wrote my reading.
Okay.
6,000.
So, Miss Dino, are we ready?
Suzanne, honey,
Just
yes,
went
you
to the
understand?
restroom.
Oh, so
Let's give her a minute.
we'll wait till, we'll wait till
Because
Suzanne.
she'll have to walk in front of the camera.
True.
And I'll do some little housekeeping announcements and
A short
Animal
PowerPoint,
yeah.
right?
shadow puppets.
Extra points for bunny ears.
Seriously.
Okay, we'll do housekeeping for Shadow Puppet.
Oh, my goodness.
Housekeeping for Shadow Puppets should be the title of the poetry collection.
Yeah, there you go.
Ooh, wouldn't that be
Don't you
good?
think?
Yeah. Or a collection of poets.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. I'm delighted to share Jessamyn Smyth, and you'll pardon my little iPhone teleprompter, I hope. We're going to hear a reading from her forthcoming collection, the Inugami Mochi, and we're going to get a chance for Q&A. A little bit of housekeeping stuff. So, apparently there's an apartment for rent back behind the house. It's a nice apartment. You need to go talk to Julie if you know somebody who's interested. If you need to take a break or step away for a minute, no worries. This is a casual house party reading, so fret not. We'll probably take a break about halfway through the selection that's going to be read so everyone can refresh and get another snack, get another cold beer. Meanwhile, for those of you who don't know Jessamyn, she is a gifted educator, prose writer, and poet. Her academic credentials make my head spin a little bit. They include a triple major interdisciplinary set of classics, ancient Greek, comparative religion, and Holocaust studies. She lived and studied in Thessaloniki, Greece for a year, and during that time she researched and wrote an undergraduate honors thesis on the history of the Jews in Salonika. The gravestones of those Jews paved the sidewalks of the city. She received an MFA at Goddard College in writing, and her degree was in poetry, prose, and playwriting, and she's since been published and recognized by her peers. But she's more than an accomplished academic. She's a leader. Jessamyn's the founding director of the new International Quest Writers Conference, and she was the founder, creator, and editor-in-chief of the literary and arts journal Tupelo Quarterly. And she's way more than that. I know, I'm going to embarrass her terribly. So part of what endears Jessamyn to me is she's working to make the world better in very tangible ways. While she was an undergrad, she was weaving together the strands of story and history as a cultural preservation. She worked as a volunteer at a rape crisis center, doing community education and outreach. Her work in crisis counseling, domestic violence shelter work, and HIV counseling and testing served as a gateway to her eventual directorship of the Public Health Community Education Program at Every Woman's Center at UMass Amherst. This work, paired with her background in storytelling as an integral feature of human survival, led her to recognize social justice as a central element of public health in the broadest cultural sense. So, please join me in extending a warm Texas welcome to Jessamyn Smyth.
Thank you so much, Lori. That's just lovely. I was joking with Lori that I could show my students how it's done if we have video evidence of that. How to make your author blush. I'm so happy to be with you here tonight. And Julie, thank you so much. And Dino, thank you so much for organizing this. And Lori for tirelessness. because this is so much warmer and nicer and more relaxed than any public space can ever be. This is really just a better way to do it. And so I'm very excited to be here with you and happy to talk afterwards. I've decided that the piece to share with you from this book that I'm really, really heartful and happy to have in the world, or almost in the world. It's technically not in the world until February 15th. So these are advanced reader copies that you can have. If you want to buy some of them later, you can have limited editions. But it's coming out very soon, and I'm really, really pleased this book is coming out because it's the closest to my heart of any of the work that I've done thus far. And I do a lot of different kinds of writing. I do short stories, obviously, but I also do a lot of poetry, and I've spent a lot of time working in theater. And this book is the best articulation that I've found yet for how I experience the world. So it's really close to my heart, and I'm glad to share it with you. So the piece that I would like to read is the title story. The upside is that I hope that it will give you a really good sense of the book because it has all the major themes of the book. It's longer than mostly. I try to not make people sit still for more than 20 minutes at a time. And this one is a bit longer. So would you like me to stop halfway through so that people can get up and pee, pardon, if you need to, or do whatever you need to do? Or would you like me to just go on through and not break the rhythm of the story, and then if anybody needs to, they can?
Looks like
entirely in your hands. Go on through.
We're gonna be hardcore. Go for it.
Well, and I happen to know that we have a lot of athletes in this room, so
Endurance.
all right. So we're gonna do the full swimmer's mile. That's what we're gonna do. Okay. All right. So I'm just gonna go in and not explain anything to you, except to say that the phrase, the Inugami Mochi, is a Japanese phrase, and it will be explained in the story. But there's a flyleaf in the front of the book that talks a little bit about what it is, and I'll just tell you briefly. The Inugami word means dog god, and mochi means, some people translate it as master, others translate it as servant, which I love. So the Inugami Mochi is the dog god's person, and the human being who is bonded to the animal spirit, who is divine and animal at the same time. The Inugami Mochi. Dog sits halfway up the steep stair cut into the mountain. The earth's been chopped out, split logs lain in the incisions, winding switchbacks jag sharply up the incline. He's got his Anubis face on, inscrutable and majestic, brows prominent. Muscles ripple his onyx fur, emphasize his formal posture. Waiting. Coming, dog, Cecily puffs. What can I say? Bipedalism sucks. He watches her foot placement, impassivity giving way to concern when she has to pull herself up a ridiculously steep step with her hands. His ears arch forward, fall along his muzzle as he gazes down at her scrambling. Freaking tall people, she mutters. Dog sees her carefully to the place where the incline eases and the footholds come closer together again, then rises, trots ahead. Soon the log stair gives way to ground, the incline reverses direction. It's all rises and falls getting to the mountain lake. Only a half mile from the pullout on the pass as the crow flies, but it takes 25 minutes of calf-burning climbs both there and back. Hard going in every direction, Cecily appreciates, except when she's doing it. Winter wind and ice have shorn the treetops clean off. It's early spring now, and not blowing, so blackflies and deerflies take pint after pint. Peregrines sail, ravens harass and bark. The occasional moose leaves heaps of pellets the size of tennis balls and giant cloven hoofprints on the trail. Elaborate leaf impressions in the mud match them in size, moose maple, fecund and striped. Lake Pleiad, hidden in a dip amidst the high swells, is always cold. On the trail, an unhappily married couple. Cecily can tell by the tension that hangs between them, by the way the man looks at her, the way the woman looks at him looking at her, and the way the combined air of maudlin longing and rage they generate. As Cecily approaches, he stops, blocking the trail, asks, "Heading to Lake Pleiad?" His wife, who had been walking faster since she saw Cecily approaching, bumps into his back, rolls her eyes. Cecily nods, appraises the trail edge for a quick way around the couple, can't find one that isn't an obvious brush-off. She skirts them anyway, ducking moose maple saplings. She meets the woman's gaze as she passes her, nods again. "Have a nice walk," she says. The woman doesn't answer. Her lips are compressed to a thin line. The man says to Cecily's back, "That's a nice-looking dog you've got there," tries to pat him on his way by. Dog ducks his hand. Cecily considers divorce. Off mountain, Cecily has been making an effort to build community. Her internet connection and the writing community generated by her blog make it too easy for her to live in complete isolation. She'd checked the paper for local events, selected a few where she might find like-minded sorts, started driving down the switchbacks and attending things on the regular now that the roads were nice. She couldn't say it was going well, or involved 1/10 the pleasure of mountain hikes with dogs, but she was following instructions. At the Progressive Women's Dinner, someone said, "Cecily, why don't you go out with Abigail since you're at least half queer? She's single." "Abigail has the intellect of a bag of hammers," Cecily answered. "My sexual preference is wit." The women laughed nervously. The bird-like one, whose name Cecily could never retain, though she'd met her at least 3 times now, screeched, "She's not dumb. She's just a very feelings-driven person. She's focused on the spiritual and emotional life more than the life of the mind." And homeopathy, Cecily had noted, and urban legends too stupid to even need debunking. She's pretty focused on those, too. "I thought we were all lesbians here," another woman interjected. Cecily replied, "The all-lesbian memo apparently didn't go out to the half-queers." An uncomfortable silence fell. Cecily sighed. "Sorry," she said. "I meant for that to be funny." The women changed the subject to kale and the evils of butter. This audience. Cecily ground her teeth, craved meat, the company of carnivores. She wondered what Dog was doing at home, if his Kong still had any freeze-dried liver in it, or if he'd knocked it all loose on the stone floor and ate it in the first 3 minutes she was gone. She made an effort, ruthlessly suppressed all inclinations toward humor or sarcasm, assumed an earnest posture. It made her back hurt, but everyone relaxed. She asked people questions about themselves, listened, praised their priorities and concerns, most of which were puzzling to her. As they finished dessert and divvied up the bill, arguing predictably about the tip and who drank what, one of the women, leaning in too close to Cecily, asked if she was going to the bar with them. Cecily demurred, pleading Dog's need to go out. "I swear that dog is your fucking boyfriend," the woman said. "No, he's really not," Cecily answered, hackles rising. "Well, he's keeping you from getting a girlfriend anyway, so what is he?" The bridge burning had been building all night. She paused long enough to consider how she was going to explain this later, decided she didn't care, and said, "What keeps me from choosing a partner of any sex is not meeting many people who aren't petty, dull, jealous, spiteful, competitive, dishonest, bigoted, uncritical, stupid sheep." The woman glared, and Cecily bared a giant grin, all carnivorous teeth. She held it until the woman looked away. At the door, on the way out, the dinner organizer, who had been in the bathroom during the bridge burning, wrapped Cecily's arm in hers in a maudlin haze of red wine and said, "It's so important to have real, safe, inclusive community, don't you think?" Cecily started laughing, had trouble stopping. Nervous tension, she supposed. "I wouldn't know," she said when she caught her breath. "In my experience, there's no such thing." The organizer looked like she'd been slapped. Cecily sighed again. "Sorry," she said, genuinely so this time. I'm just a very truths-driven person. It's a kind of disability. The combination of not being willing to lie and having heightened awareness of when other people are doing it. The averted glance, the slight turn, the shoulder stiffening, the tightened grip. The body in motion is a text Cecily Speed reads. She can't not do it. It's innate. It makes her cynical. Dog reads this way too. It makes him smart. The two of them avoid a lot of trouble because of it, but Cecily tends to land in some as a result too. She tells Dog about the dinner debacle. He listens to her for a while, then gets bored and goes to the door. Yeah, Cecily says, sometimes you do act like a boyfriend. You've got the attention span of one anyhow. Dog raises an eyebrow. Cecily laughs. They go outside for a moonlight stroll. They see a barred owl, hear coyotes, find a luckstone, quartz band lit by stars. Walk for miles, Milky Way drunk and silent, perfectly content. The next day, she calls her grad school buddy, with whom she's been making deals about building community and taking purposeful action to reduce her isolation in this very rural corner of Vermont. I really don't think I'm a mean person, Cecily says. I have no tolerance for incongruence between what people say and what they do. That describes basically everyone, her friend points out. You aren't that way, Cecily says. You are exactly and precisely what you say you are. I think I'm that way too. I can have total confidence that you will respond rationally and appropriately to interactions, in total congruence with your stated values and ethics. Why is that asking so much? Animals do that. Forebrains are not always helpful, her friend agrees. They do contribute to and justify very peculiar social behavior. Maybe you and I just both have Asperger's, Cecily says. Her friend finds this hilarious and unlikely. Cecily finds it to be too, but insists it could be a pretty good explanation. We're disablingly smart in not terribly helpful ways. We find human behavior peculiar and often distasteful. It's that or having been born into the wrong species, she says. I suspect that latter explanation is the one more likely to go undiagnosed in this day and age, her friend says. True, Cecily agrees. Dog discovers the body of Lake Pleiad like it's newly formed for him every time. The white and gold birch screen at water's edge gives way and he plows right in at a gallop. A golden retriever splashes about in the deep, biting at the spray generated by his own front feet slapping the surface. Dog hurls himself onto the meniscus, crashes through. Be careful, Cecily says. Even Greg Louganis hits the boards sometimes. Dog ignores her and speeds like a seal, sleek and shining through the wet to once again hurl himself from shore and crash. The Golden's human wanders closer to Cecily, says, "There are babies, aren't they?" Ducking the question, Cecily says, "What a nice day." The woman isn't so easily redirected. "It's like the kiddie pool up here." "I don't have a kid, I have a dog," Cecily says, "on purpose." "People do say they replace children for a lot of us," the stranger says, smiling. The us abrades Cecily. She never knows quite what it signifies, except that it's a fiction she didn't usually consent to. "They've got nothing to do with human children," she snaps. "That diminishes them and our relationships with them. And in my experience, any pop psychology that presupposes an us, whether it's about women or any other group of individual and disparate beings, is lying from the start." "How do you see our relationship with dogs, then?" The woman asks the question neutrally, nothing but curiosity in her voice and body. And Cecily realizes she's being a complete asshole and not holding up her agreement with her grad school friend to be more welcoming to people, more open to the possibility that they are a potential social network, or even, heaven forfend, human friends. This woman might well be creepy or idiotic, or bipedal sandpaper of the emotional variety, but she might also simply be dog-like, sniffing and interacting, wagging her tail and making unthreatening displays. Most likely, Cecily decides, she's still just twitchy from the progressive women's dinner. She walks it back. Sorry, the subject's just sort of a peeve of mine. I apologize for being rude to you. The woman shrugs. You weren't rude. I want to know what you think. Why? Beats talking about what a nice day it is, doesn't it? The woman smiles again. Cecily decides the woman is just very golden retriever and unlikely to give up on and unlikely to give up on boisterous and largely indiscriminate social interaction. So she smiles back. I guess I don't know about anyone else's relationship with dogs, but mine, I usually call him compadre or friend, sort of capitalized in my head. Or my familiar. Like from witchcraft? From a lot of places. Every culture has some version of the animal spirit deeply associated with a human, and different language for it. She decides this sounds pedantic, even though it's right, so she appends a question, because this is what people do to make a recognizable and non-threatening opening. Don't they? I guess they do, the woman says. Totems. She squats down and picks up a small piece of driftwood, which she then begins to carve with a knife from her belt. Yes, Cecily answers, noticing the woman's muscular back, her thick red hair. The witch's cat, the kitsune, the kelpie, guardians, meddlers, whatever, it's part of sacred tradition all over the world and every time. The red-haired woman nods, keeps carving. Cecily can't see what she's making, but decides she likes the shape of the woman's body, the way she smells open, like a moss-covered log in hot sun. She says softly, in some Japanese traditions, there's the Inugami. He looks like a dog, but he's a guardian spirit. He's profoundly bonded with his mochi, his human, but with a completely independent and unpredictable will of his own. They make each other more powerful than they would be otherwise, and care for one another with deep mutual respect and intimacy. It's not like a human relationship, though. It's something of its own. That's lovely, the woman says. Yes, Cecily answers, but in a solemn way. It has risks and costs, too. It's isolating. It has always and everywhere freaked people out, even when they worship it. I don't see why. Cecily has actually thought a lot about why that is, but has never tried to articulate it aloud before. Maybe because that kind of relationship is by nature exclusionary of the idea that human groups have primacy. Most people are herd animals. The Inugami Mochi has left the group. She and her familiar have a joined experience of the world, one that no outside person can share. She has a unique vantage point that is no longer entirely human, and is both honored and feared because of it. Most often feared. Burned at the stake. Yeah, or they kill her familiar because it's the worst thing they can do to her. They tear out half her soul and she never stops bleeding. God, the woman says, I can't imagine. Good, Cecily says. Doug comes by, shakes cold water on Cecily, laughs with crinkled ears, plunges back into the lake. The golden, a clump of sodden oak leaves stuck on his head, has settled into doing laps, smooth, decorous strokes that don't break the surface, an old lady in an Esther Williams bathing cap, blessed out. I think I had that once, the woman says after they watch the dogs a while. When I was a child, there was a cat. I dreamed I was in her for her whole life. I could see the night fields through her eyes when she hunted, taste the mouse blood. Yes, Cecily says, surprised. Like that. She disappeared one day, just didn't come home. Some part of me has never stopped waiting for her. I still have those dreams sometimes. I always wake up sad. Yes, Cecily says, like that. The woman rises, extends her hand to Cecily. In it, a small, simple carving of dog, his joy and water captured in quick edges and sharp spray. Take this, the woman says, a present. Holy shit, that's beautiful, Cecily says. She examines it from every angle, deeply impressed by its vividness. Come home with me, she proposes, without really having intended to, and there is an extremely embarrassing pause, during which Cecily studies the carving and the woman studies her feet. Sorry, God, I can't believe I said that, Cecily says eventually. It's been a really long winter. I don't really go that way, usually, I don't think, the woman answers. Still mortified, but aware of the syntax's implications and noting fluster in peripheral vision, Cecily waits, looks away, lets the woman study her. After a bit, the woman whistles for her golden, who galumps out of the water, panting and giggling, all trace of old lady gone. This is a fluvium, she says. Cecily laughs aloud at the name. He's not my familiar, but he's funny as hell and I love him. Cecily rubs the wet dog, who leans on her passionately, wiggling and smelling of rotten vegetables. He's been in the swampy part, she notes. Yeah, the woman says, haven't we all? Can he come home with you too? Of course, Cecily answers. I have freeze-dried liver and dehydrated sweet potatoes. Look at this, Cecily says to Dog later, after the woman and effluvium have gone, holding out the carving from Lake Pleiad. It's you. Really you. She nailed it. Dog noses it gently, curls his nose under his tail, and sleeps. I like that she didn't tell me her name, and that it didn't occur to me to ask, Cecily says. She imagines that later, a month or 3 on, she'll bump into the woman in the co-op or at the hardware store, and it will be terribly awkward. To fill the scarlet silence, she'll introduce herself to the husband, who will sense the awkwardness but not be able to put a finger on it. The woman will tell him some small and easy lie on the way home, and life will go on. For now, she likes that her sheets and her face smell like mossy logs in hot sun. She won't wash either until she really has to. Back on the trail to Lake Pleiad, Cecily huffs down the last incline to the water. Dog has bounded ahead, all stiff-legged rocking horse gait as reserved for particularly joyous green-gold-blue days. He tears into the water after the stick she throws, brings it back in a glitter of spray. She throws it again, 70 miles an hour, his glorious water entry, she thinks, and he retrieves it, his iridescent black fur blue in all this brilliant light. A third time, galloping like Poseidon's steeds, and then Dog screams. He's in an unnatural position in the water, vertical and writhing. He is screaming. It is the worst sound she has ever heard. She sprints into the water after him, up to her shoulders. He's stuck on something. Oh God, oh fuck, he's impaled on something. A huge limb of a fallen tree has come into the lake, entirely invisible from the shore, and he's impaled on a branch the thickness of her wrist. It's sunk into his abdomen, and he's screaming. Her stoic dog, who hides pain always. He's screaming and screaming, a soul-destroying scream, and she can't walk this back. She can't make this not be happening. Everything takes on the hyper-clarity of life and death, of what must be done. Adrenaline floods her body. In an EMT class ages past, she learned that whenever possible, before moving the patient, one should saw off the impaling object without moving it in the wound so they don't bleed out when it's pulled. Up to her shoulders in the remote mountain lake, Dog screaming in terrified agony, the tree under the waves massive, she does what must be done. She wraps her arms low around Dog's screaming body, feels for the impaling branch, ducks underwater, embraces her feet against the fallen trunk, gets the angle as right as she can, and yanks him off it with all the power in her. His yipping scream goes south to horror pain, echoing across miles. She holds the hole in him shut, flails to shore, puts his legs on the ground. They do not hold. Her hands and arms are covered with blood. Oh God, oh Dog, hold on. Okay, I have you, beloved. Okay, we're gonna be okay. Oh God, oh Dog, you're okay, I have you. Comes out of her in a steady stream as people from the far side of the lake begin to drift slowly toward her, and she takes that in, discards them as useless to her and Dog, examines the hole in him as best as she can. It's full of tree shards and mud. It's pouring blood. She can see too much glistening in there. She can't tell if it's intestine or muscle. She hopes it's muscle. There is no cell signal on this mountain. It's a 45-minute drive down to the vet in town. It's Saturday. It will be past 3 when they can possibly get there. They close at 3 on Saturdays. There's an answering service. She'll break down the fucking door if she has to. And as she's thinking all of this, she's pulling the wound edges together and gripping them in a tight fist slick with blood. And Dog's legs have gone entirely rubber. He weighs 77 pounds. She knows this because he just had a checkup during which his beefcake muscle and glow of health from all this mountaineering was much admired. Her spinal injury means she can't lift much over 40 pounds at a whack without collapse of her own, so it's going to have to be adrenaline then. And she lifts him in her arms, still holding him shut where his life is spilling out. And she settles him into as good a grip as she can get, and she starts to run. And she runs, and runs, up the steep trail, holding him, trying not to bounce him, the steady patter of, "We're okay, dog, you're okay, I have you just a little further, okay, my love, you're okay, hang on, beloved, we're gonna be okay," falling out of her as fast as his blood is falling out of him, making it harder and harder to grip the slick flesh closed, even his fur becoming slick, a seal in her arms, slippery and huge, so heavy, and the word dead weight comes into her head, and she banishes it and runs faster, the patter falling from her mouth louder now, from panic and burning lungs thudding up and down the ski trails and passes and switchbacks leading to the road. And when they come to the steep stair cut into the mountain face, the one with logs laid as steps 5-6 feet apart and steep as fuck, the one where he always watched over her to climb to be sure she didn't fall on her ass while she complained about tall people, she knows she's in trouble, and she can't think how she's going to get him up that. And he cries in her arms, and she has to put him down, and she has to stay low over him to hold the hole in him closed, and she has to say the worst thing she has ever said in her life, holding in his guts in her blood-slick hands. "Dog, I am so sorry. I have to ask you to help me now. I can't get you up this by myself. Can you help me? Oh God, dog, I'm so sorry. I need you to try, okay, dog? I need you to do this. There is no other way. I need you to live through this, dog. Do you understand me? I'm so sorry. My dog, God, my love. Oh God, we have to get up this thing. We have to try, okay? You have to help me now. I'm so sorry." And Dog looks at her with pain clouds in his eyes and hyperventilating pant and flinching lips exposing his beautiful white teeth. And he says, "Yes, Cecily, I will try." And her heart breaks into a million tiny shards on the rocks. She lifts him one steep increment at a time, propping him on his own wobbling legs and holding him shut as best she can. And he stiffens as best as he can, and he pulls himself up by his front paws, claws sunk into log steps, muscles shaking, and now Cecily is crying, and lifting and holding him shut, and scraping them both up the impossible section. And then they are past it, and she gathers him in again and holds his wound shut and begins again to run, close to the road now, a final series of hills, her arms and legs and lungs and spine flaming, his weight somehow more dense now even than it was, and the denseness terrifies her and sends new surges of adrenaline that get them to the car, where she fumbles him into the passenger seat, propped, and she flies to the driver's side. And when she gets in, she sees that his gums, exposed by his grimacing pant, are white as snow. And she screams at him, "Don't you fucking die on me, dog. Don't you do it. We're almost there, okay? You're okay. You're gonna be okay. We're gonna be okay. You're almost there. You are not allowed to die." And she sends the car hurtling down the switchbacks, her right hand leaving his wound only to shift, blood spattering the windshield with every flick back and forth. She lets it hurtle in neutral down the steep grades while she holds him together, a barely controlled fall down the mountain at insane and deathly speeds. And in 20 minutes, they're in cell tower range, and she's called the answering service for the vet, and they are stupid and incompetent, and she calls again and again until they vow the vet is on his way. And in 30 minutes, she's in the vet's parking lot, and it's almost 4, and no one is there to meet her. And she leaves Dog in the passenger seat saying, "I will be right back. I will be right back. You hold on, my love. I will be right back." And she runs across the street to the first house and bangs on the door. and no one answers, and so she runs to the second house and bangs and yells until someone in boxers and nothing else appears, and she rants and raves about ice, and he gives her a tray of cubes from his freezer and a dishcloth, and she sprints back to the car and yanks open the door, and Dog's eyes are clouded and vague, and his tongue is white now too, and she screams at him, "You hold on, my angel, you hold on," and she packs the wound with the ice, and he doesn't even flinch. His head lolls onto her shoulder, and she wails, "Beloved, my beloved, hold on." And they are like this for what seems a very long time, before the vet comes careening into the parking lot and pushes Cecily out of the way and carries Dog in his arms like a bride across the threshold of the office. In moments like this, everything goes both very fast and very slow. The vet has one of those tables that rises and lowers. He puts Dog on his feet on the table at floor height, and Dog falls. The vet turns him on his side, jacks the table up, pulls in a strong, brilliant light, and examines the wound for a long, long, silent time. He listens to Dog's heart and lungs. He presses Dog's gums and tongue, and his lips go thin when nothing much happens to the pale, pale flesh. He turns and looks at Cecily. She is blood-covered, shaking, afire, silent, urgent, staring him into the next world, or bridging to him from it with her flaming gaze across the divide, Dog's life in their hands. "You have to save him," she whispers. "Save us." He stares back, opens his mouth to speak, closes it, thinks. "Here's how it is," he says at last. "The ice was smart. It closed things up a bit, probably helped the pain. There's a lot of mess in there, tearing, detritus, a high risk of infection. Without cutting, I can't tell if it perforated his intestinal wall, or if it did, how much damage there is. He's hanging on hard, but he's in shock, and he may or may not make it. I am here by myself. I can try to do this. I might succeed. But I have no staff, no backup, and I believe he is stable enough right now to make it to the Burlington Emergency Veterinary Hospital. They're excellent surgeons, I know them, and I know they can do better than I can, but it's a risk. If you go, I can't give him anything at all for pain, because they need to decide what anesthesia to use. You'd have to get there really fast." Cecily shudders. The silence stretches. 5 seconds. 10. An elongated 15 seconds, equivalent to years. "Tell me what to do," she cries out finally. "I don't know which risk to take. He is everything. He is everything. I can't make the wrong choice. Oh God, oh Dog, tell me what to do." And to the vet again, "Which do I do?" "Go," he says. "Go now. Drive like hell. I'm calling them as soon as you're out the door. They'll be ready for him." He lifts Dog off the table, deposits him in Cecily's arms. "Go." She runs. Hurtling up Route 7 into the city. 40 minutes. Dog lolls sideways against the window, his tongue caught between his own teeth now. Her hand on his ribs, pleading with him the whole way. A steady rain of calling, calling, calling him. "Don't leave, Dog. Oh God, Dog, stay, stay with me. I have you, beloved." Bev's blessedly close to the highway. A tech runs out to her in the entryway, gathers Dog from her arms, weighs him. Yes, 77 pounds for anesthesia. Says to Cecily, "We have to triage. There's one other in worse shape, believe it or not. Come with me." She puts Dog and Cecily together in a huge cage on the floor on sheepskins. The vet races by and shoots him up with some canine narcotic, says to Cecily, "This is basically heroin. He might nod and puke. You just hold him and hold this pan under his head and talk to him and try to keep him calm, not moving." And they give her a pan, and she holds him and holds the pan under his head, and he nods and drools copiously, but he doesn't puke, and she whispers love to him in every language they know. She sings him Sam Cooke's Cupid, their love song. Her voice does not shake. She strokes his elaborate ears, extra fancy, she calls them, as always. And when they stabilize the St. Bernard who wasn't breathing, they come for Dog and put him on the surgical table and have Cecily hold his head while they intubate him and wrap his muzzle in gauze. And she whispers, "Love, love," and says, "I have you, beloved. I'm right here. I have you. We're okay. You're gonna make it. I'm right here. You come back and find me right here in a little while after they help you. You're okay, my love. We're okay." And they put a mask over his nose, and his eyes rolls back into his head, and then he is unconscious. The moment he goes out, Cecily starts to shake at the depth of bone, from her feet to the top of her head, and tears fly out of her eyes. She ripples in the air itself, white as paper, wobbling. The surgeon does a double take at the sudden collapse of what had until then been a hyper-functional being who was clearly good in a crisis, and says, "Are you okay? Look, whether you are or you aren't, you need to go outside now. Don't puke here. I need to save them." And Cecily backs up a few steps and sees the scalpels come out, and a nurse shoves her out the door, and she runs for the parking lot and gets out there just in time for the puke to hit pavement. She sits on the curb in the parking lot, sobbing, shaking, in post-adrenaline flood sickness, and chants under her breath, dog God, beloved, come back to me." Time ticks by. City bats come out, disappear into dusk. She goes in, they shake their heads to indicate, no news, not finished yet. She goes back out. It is dark blue and lilac-scented in the parking lot. Stars come out, move long distances. She goes in, they shake their heads to indicate no news, not finished yet. She goes back out. It is black and copper-tasting, and a copper-tasting wind off Champlain bathes the parking lot. Orion, Ursa Major, the Pleiades, the fucking Pleiades. She goes in. They shake their heads to indicate no news, not finished yet. She goes back out. She calls her friend in California who is supposed to be coming out to Vermont for 2 weeks in a few days to see if they would be a family, her and him and dog, after years of epistolary relationship that could be love but could also be weird. They'd never met in person and were also best friends. He answers on the first ring, something glib and funny as he always did when she called. She gets out his name, bursts into hysterical sobs again, unintelligible. "Cecily, what's happened?" She manages dog and nothing else for several minutes, hitching and coughing with tears. "He's in surgery. He's been in there for hours. He might not make it. Impaled. I got him off the mountain, but he might not make it." And her friend gathers bits and pieces of the story, asks sensible questions she can't make sense of, has her walk the cell phone into the reception area and hand the phone to the person working there, gives them his credit card number and fronts the $1,200 they require, gets Cecily back on the phone, tells her to worry about that later when she knows where she is and where her wallet is and what's needed and what's going to be needed when dog is awake and stable, which will be any time now, he says, any time now. He's going to be awake and stable any time now, crooning, "You're okay, you and dog, you're okay. I'm here with you. You're going to be okay, both of you. He's coming back to you, Cecily. You and dog are an epic with many verses to go. What you've both been through today is unspeakable, but he has you. He's going to make it. He's coming back." After some time, Cecily is composed enough to say, "No matter what else ever happens or doesn't between us, I will never forget what you did for me tonight." "Don't even," he answers. "Oh God," Cecily says, "I see the surgeon. She's coming out." She's nodding. "Go," her friend says. "Go. Call me back when you can," and hangs up. By the time Cecily got dog back home, it was almost dawn, light streaking the edges of the pale sky. Somewhere in the course of the night, the adrenaline supply had run out entirely, remains puked up, and nothing left to hide the catastrophic failure of her already damaged spine, which was now somehow both locked and liquid, unbending and unhinged from all pelvic moorings. Dog was semi-conscious in the back of the car, and she couldn't lift him out. Finally, she got down on the ground on her knees beside the footwell and pulled him from the bench seat onto her body, cradled in her lap. She was unable